Russian security services say they have foiled a terror attack planned for central Moscow. A heavily armed suspect was tracked down before being able to carry out any attack and was shot dead after opening fire on FSB officers.
Well, Jackie, Federal Security Service agents actually found a Kalashnikov assault rifle and several grenades on the terrorist after they investigated his body. They've also determined that he's a native of one of the Central Asian republics just south of Russia. Now, also according to the FSB, the terrorist's brother actually had turned him in just 2 weeks prior to this event after suspicions that he had been communicating with an international cell of terrorists and his sudden disappearance.
Smoke plumes over southern Lebanon after what the Israeli military referred to as a security incident. It said a cell of Hezbollah fighters tried to infiltrate Israeli-controlled territory. Israeli soldiers tracked them and repelled them with machine gun, tank and artillery fire. In Tel Aviv, where they'd rushed for security assessments, Israel's dueling prime minister and defense minister put on a rare show of unity. Israel's prime minister made an explicit reference to the war of 2006 in warning Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, that Israel's armed forces stood ready to respond further. Israel has been on heightened alert since an airstrike last week in Syria attributed to Israel killed a Hezbollah fighter there. Hezbollah has vowed to avenge any such deaths. In southern Lebanon, the aftermath of the Israeli artillery barrage. Hezbollah denied having carried out any operation, saying the Israelis fired into Lebanon out of confusion and panic.
South Korean health authorities have refuted North Korea's claim that a man presumed to have defected back to the north was COVID-19 positive.
Up until now, the defector has not been identified as a confirmed or symptomatic patient, according to our electronic system. We've carried out tests on 2 people who have been in frequent contact with the defector, but both tested negative for the virus.
The Gyeonggi Nambu Provincial Police Agency said in a briefing held Monday that the 24-year-old man in question was last spotted on July 18th on South Korea's northwestern region of Gangwado Island in Incheon, where his bag of personal items were collected. The defector is believed to have swam under South Korean military's barbed wire fence installed above a waterway to get across the inter-Korean border.
President Trump tonight for only the second time in public wearing a mask while touring a biotech center in North Carolina. The visit intended to focus attention on the search for a potential vaccine. But it comes as his national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, is now self-quarantining after testing positive for coronavirus, the highest-ranking White House official yet to get the disease. The White House says O'Brien has mild symptoms, that he's now working from a secure location off-site. The president today dismissing concerns about his own safety.
No, I haven't seen him lately. I heard he tested, yeah.
It's unclear how much contact President Trump and O'Brien have had in recent weeks. Their last public appearance together was 17 days ago in Florida.
Malaysia's former Prime Minister Najib Razak has been sentenced to 12 years in jail after he was convicted of corruption. The verdict was delivered in the first trial linked to the 1MDB state investment fund scandal during his time in power. Najib was found guilty of all 7 charges and fined close to $50 million. He continues to deny any wrongdoing and says he will appeal. This is the first case centered on the transfer of nearly $10 million from a unit of 1MDB into Najib's personal accounts. He's been convicted of abuse of power, 3 counts of criminal breach of trust and 3 counts of money laundering. Najib launched 1MDB as a state investment fund when he was Prime Minister in 2009.
News just in, the IMF has approved South Africa's request for emergency financial support. South Africa has asked for a $4.3 billion under the COVID-19 related emergency finances.
Well, what's important to note here, Clement, that it comes at a very low interest rate and it's to be paid back over the next 5 or so years. And that's going to be very important for South Africa's government, which we already know is drowning in debt. So this is a $4.3 billion loan that you've just mentioned, just over 70 billion rand in rand terms. And the statement that has been released by National Treasury says that this is going to go to supporting health and frontline services, protect the most vulnerable, drive job creation, which is going to be very important for South Africa over the next few years, and of course unlock economic growth through reforms and stabilize public debt.
Its latest tit-for-tat measure, China has suspended Hong Kong's extradition treaty with Canada, Australia and the United Kingdom. The Beijing's move comes after all these countries suspended their extradition treaties with Hong Kong over the controversial national security law. In a press briefing, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said, and I quote, "The wrong action of Canada, Australia and the United Kingdom in politicising the judicial cooperation with Hong Kong has seriously hurt the basis of judicial cooperation." Along with the extradition treaties, criminal justice cooperation agreements between the countries will also be suspended. Now, all these nations have slammed the new security law, calling it as an erosion of civil liberties and human rights in the financial hub.
Well, it's not just the US-China relationship that is at stake. China's ties with Russia, too, seem to have hit a roadblock. Weeks after accusing China of spying, Russia has suspended the delivery of the S-400 missile defense system to Beijing. China is downplaying all of this. It says the suspension of the S-400 delivery is to help the Chinese army with its anti-pandemic actions. But reports say Russia, too, is distancing itself from China.
The mayor of Seattle calling on Congress to pass a law keeping unwanted federal agents out of her city. Over the weekend, protesters and federal officers clashed in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. People have been protesting there for police reform since George Floyd's death.
Brazil's frontline health workers and senior clerics there are accusing the president of crimes against humanity over the COVID outbreak, and they're taking their complaint to pretty high, to the International Criminal Court in The Hague over it. Brazil's suffered more than 87,000 deaths and 2.4 million registered cases, making it the second worst affected country after the United States. So a union representing more than 1 million Brazilian medical professionals says Jair Bolsonaro reacted to the pandemic with contempt, neglect and denial. It also points to Bolsonaro's adamant insistence on using medicines which they say are proven to be ineffective in treating COVID-19. And further, that his resistance to social isolation measures worsened the spread of the virus. It is the second complaint to the ICC then against Bolsonaro over the health crisis. The first was filed in April with similar accusations.